In the heart of the city lies its citadel, built by French colonial engineers in the 19th century and designed only to withstand gunpowder and round shot. Against it, the Americans deployed all the firepower of a mighty modern army. Despite these ferocious assaults, the defenders held out for 25 days behind the citadel's walls and moat, until in the end it was carried by the oldest of methods, direct assault by infantrymen.
Well, I'd been over there 4 months, and we were always in the rice paddies, in the jungles, patrols, something like that. This was something new. It's like broke into like any city, blocks, concrete buildings. And the thing was, you never know what was going to happen every time you turned a corner, or every time you entered a building. We got in the habit of throwing grenades and firing first before we went anywhere. And in some incidents, it was no more than 5 feet that you had to shoot the enemy, or he was trying to shoot you. This went on building by building. We had to take it. There was no such thing as trying to clear a block out, you know, just with a platoon. We broke down to 5-man teams. And, it was just chaos, you know. Just whoever shot fastest made it, in which quite a few did make it on our side, you know. Our job was to take the citadel. I can remember a huge wall around it. Most of the city was taken at the time, but the citadel was left. I would say half of the company had serious enough wounds. The final count of men that were killed in my platoon were 5 out of my platoon alone. And I think out of our company, I believe there was 15.
The citadel finally fell, but the defenders had already slipped away. By early afternoon at Waterloo, it was now the turn of the massed ranks of infantry to go into action. Wellington's men awaited their attack, lying down in the dead ground behind the crest of the ridge or crouching behind hedge banks, muskets at the ready, until the French columns came within range. Most of the infantry carried muskets like this. Now this is a Brown Bess. A soldier had to stand up to put powder and ball down the barrel and then ram them home with this. So he usually fired standing, and a well-trained soldier could fire 2 shots a minute. But it was not an accurate weapon. If its heavy lead ball hit home, it was deadly. But you'd be lucky to hit a man over 70 yards away. So it was really only useful against large targets. The French infantry who made the first attack presented just such a target. They advanced across the valley in massed battalion columns, 25 men deep and 200 wide. They halted 40 yards down this slope and began to deploy into line. At this point, the British infantry, 4 Scottish regiments, discharged their muskets, taking the French by surprise. They then fixed bayonets and burst through the hedge. Here on the ridge, 8,000 or 9,000 English and French fought a violent hand-to-hand battle. The French, impeded by the press of their own numbers, soon broke and fled, and were chased back across the valley by the Scots dragoons to the cry of "Scotland forever." The experience of battle for the infantrymen had altered very little in the centuries before Waterloo. For the Persians, who fought the Lydians at Sardis in 546 BC, combat took a form which would have been familiar to Julius Caesar or Frederick the Great of Prussia. Once the 2 sides made contact, it was a business of push and shove with edged weapons. The fight was always short because the muscular effort required was too exhausting to be sustained for long. Gunpowder scarcely varied the essential nature of the foot soldier's experience. He now had to endure cannon and musket shot instead of the arrow cloud. But since black powder weapons were so inaccurate, he still had to close with the enemy to deliver a decision. So, after the opening exchange of projectiles, it was hand-to-hand combat that decided who gave way and who won the day. What did change the infantryman's experience of battle, and change it catastrophically, was the appearance of quick-firing artillery. The range and accuracy of the rifle, and the inescapable blanket fire of the machine gun. Disastrously, no army had appreciated by the outbreak of the Great War their impact on massed infantry formations. The British soldiers who left their trenches on the first day of the Somme walked into a scythe of machine gun fire. A survivor remembered, by the time I'd gone 10 yards, there seemed to be only a few men left around me. By the time I'd gone 20 yards, I seemed to be on my own. And then I was hit myself.
Everybody would wonder who's going to get killed. How many of us will come back? I'd rather get killed than get badly wounded and lie out there and die. And the 1,001 things, trying to picture how your mother and dad'd take it when the telegram arrives to say the Secretary of State regrets to inform you so and so and so and so.
They came over, not in extended order like we advanced, but they came over en masse, just like a crowd coming out of a football match. And it wasn't a matter of aiming, it was just a matter of loading and pulling the trigger.
60,000 soldiers were hit on that July morning. 20,000 died. The disaster the infantrymen suffered on the Somme introduced a new experience for men on the battlefield. When not attacking, they found shelter below ground. When they did attack, they did so in single file to present as small a target as possible. In the years since 1918, the infantryman has had to fight to survive on every sort of battlefield. He has sweated through the jungles and rainforests of Southeast Asia. He's stormed through the deserts of North Africa. He's suffered on the exposed beaches of the Pacific Islands. He's endured the unforgiving snows of the Russian steppe. He's struggled in the mountains of Italy and the Balkans. He's battled through the hedgerows of Northern Europe. But despite today's technology, he still remains essentially a foot soldier.
All of a sudden, you're the most important man. You're as good as any fighter pilot or all the other guys. You're at the front and everyone's doing what you want to do. And that's a good feeling, apart from the fact that you are at the front. Unlike everybody else, what you're going to fight with is you and a gun, which they give you. And everything else, you carry on your back. And you're always cold, you're always wet, you're always frightened, and you're always completely shattered all the time. You're never comfortable. And then you have to beat all of those things to do the thing that they want you to do, which is to go in and smack the enemy down hard and finish the job. You can bombard it, you can fire at it from aircraft, you can do everything to the target. But the only time you win is to have us lot, the grunts of the world, standing there saying this is now our piece of real estate. All the technology is great, but there's nothing that can really help us do that.
In one important sense, Waterloo resembled every other battle from the earliest times to the end of the 19th century. The commander could see the whole battlefield, or most of it anyway, from one spot, and he could deliver his orders to his subordinates without delay. But in fact, Wellington was rarely in one spot for long. He was constantly in motion, riding always to where danger threatened worst, sometimes even sitting out the charges in the middle of one of his infantry squares. He could ride from the center of the line to the right flank in about 10 minutes. And despite the massive amount of smoke that covered the battlefield, he was able to keep much of it directly in view. If he saw something that needed attention, but he could not go himself, he would hastily write his orders on slips of parchment like this and dispatch them by messenger.